Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Boobies and Noobies. You can follow us at Boobies Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd like to support the podcast and get a little extra bonus Boobies content every month, you can support us on Patreon at Boobies Podcast. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today I'm joined by another fabulous romance podcast host, the wonderful, talented Miss Becky Feldman. Welcome, Becky.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. And for anybody that does not recognize Becky immediately off the name, as you should and will someday, Becky is the host of Too Stupid to Live, which is another romance novel review podcast based here out of Los Angeles.
Yes, that's right. And big fan of your podcast.
And vice versa.
Yeah, yes. And this is fun because you are actually a guest on my podcast.
Yes.
So this is like a very exciting part 2 crossover.
I know. So you'll have to listen to crossover part 1 on Too Stupid to Live and crossover part 2 right here and now. So it's meant to be.
It is, yeah. This is exciting.
I'm excited because your podcast is one of the podcasts I listened to as I was preparing and thinking about starting a romance podcast. Too Stupid to Live was already out there in the universe. And so, yeah, I definitely listened to you and took some inspiration from your show. And
that's so nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's super fun. Can you give everyone a brief rundown of what they can expect in an episode of Too Stupid to Live?
Yeah, so Too Stupid to Live, I review romance novels that are $5 and under. I usually bring along a guest from my comedy days or just like interesting writers or people that I like. And yeah, we just sit and we review novels that are both worthy of being $5 and worthy of being 99 cents.
Perfect. And there's, that's, I mean, not just true for romance, let's be honest. There's plenty of books out there, that movies too, that, you know, I'd like to keep it to $1 or less.
Totally. And I'm the type of person, like, I devour shit. Like, I like bad movies, I like bad books, TV shows.
Oh, same. Like bad horror movies, like, I can watch them all day long. Like, whenever they do on Sci-Fi Channel, they'll do, like, Shark Week, but it'll be, like, the bad shark horror movie Shark Week. Love it. Like, Sharknado 1 through 99. I am there.
Yeah, those were good.
Those
are good. Yeah.
So good. That's a whole other podcast. I mean, we could just do
Shark podcast.
Shark sci-fi horror movie podcast. Like, that might need to happen.
There should be a shark romance novel. I'm sure it's out there.
There's gotta be. I mean, they
like
have the dinosaur romance now.
Right. Yeah. There's a shark. There's a shark out there. I know it.
Yeah. Would you rather fuck a shark or a dinosaur?
I think I'm gonna go with dinosaur just because I do have trauma from watching Jaws and like being scared of water. Like, I feel like I'd be too scared to be in the moment.
So it's less of like your preference of how sexy dinosaurs are and more of like, it's just never going to be a shark.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% psychological. And I feel bad for the shark because maybe I'm like, there could be a shark out there who is the one, but I'm just not.
That foxy motherfucker with the fin.
Totally. And it's like, I'm sorry to that shark, but you know, I'm not a perfect human.
Yeah. No, I mean, we all have our faults.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, shark teeth just happen to be yours.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely did not expect this episode to take that turn so quickly, considering we're not discussing sharks or anything about sharks in this book.
I know.
But, you know, that's something we can aspire to, include more shark, dinosaur, bestiality romance in this podcast.
I mean, we have to. I think it's headed in that direction anyway. And let me say, at least like in not this podcast.
I hope everyone can sense the sarcastic tone when they listen to this.
I feel like maybe I'm on my podcast now. I was like, yeah, we're gonna do a shark fucking romance novel one of these days. But no, interesting about this book is that it does take place at the beach.
Yes, so there you go. So we're halfway there. Halfway there. We just got to get farther into the water.
Yes.
So it's It's coming. Dun dun.
Yeah, oh my God.
What can you tell me, where did the idea for doing a romance podcast at all come from for you? And also the title alone. Like, I feel like a lot of the romance novelist or romance novel review podcasts that I listen to or have heard of all have kind of like, you know, a punny name or something, but you went, I feel like yours is so different. Too Stupid to Live. So I definitely want to know a little bit more about where the title came from.
Yeah, so in regards to the title, I started reading romance novels. Well, I had romance novels that I liked, in high school and in college, but I full on started reading cheap romance novels, I want to say, like mid-early 20s. I am a struggling writer and actor, didn't have a lot of money, and was like, I can't be spending...
You were in it for the cheap factor.
For the cheap factor. Like, for me, I mean, there is a huge difference of paying, $15 a week for reading romance versus paying $5 a week for reading romance.
Oh,
like,
sure.
It adds up, and so that's how I got into it. And then, I don't know, I would, read these terrible books and enjoy them, and sometimes I would just, in my journal, instead of, complaining about my life, I would just, write, Andrew in this book was kind of a dick, and, and I was like, oh, this is funny, I should, start a podcast, and, it's funny, my brother gave me a microphone, kind of like the one I'm speaking into now, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna just start, talking about romance novels in my closet. One of these days I'm gonna get guests, and, so I came up with the title Too Stupid to Live because I was very much getting into reading romance, and I wanted to see if there was an online community where I can just talk about it with. And lo and behold, there's a bunch.
Yeah, which we both know at this point is huge. Yeah. I mean, the Romance Landia community is giant and fabulous.
And I was stunned because I have always been honestly up until a few years ago a very closeted romance reader. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I guess that's correct. I was what people say romance readers shouldn't be. I was that person. So I was like, oh, okay, I hope there's an online community. And so when I was searching for it, there was this term that would pop up called Too Stupid to Live. And basically it was a criticism by a non-romance reader or by a critical romance reader that they would refer to as damsels in distress, as, putting themselves in danger, not making smart choices, and having the hero rescue her. And they would refer to her as Too Stupid to Live, and I think that's such a demeaning term.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it back. Because my argument is, every character in a romance novel is too stupid to live because they're fictional. Yeah. And, none of them exist in real life, and that's what's so great about them. So, instead of, diminishing them, let's analyze
Embrace
them.
it.
Exactly, yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's kind of like, did you ever do, you're a performer, did you ever do vagina monologues, at some point?
It's funny, I've seen it, and then I also started doing storytelling shows, and I talk about my vagina a lot.
Oh,
so
great.
I do my own vagina monologues. Yeah.
So you've created your own vagina monologues. Honestly, it's one of those shows where I would love to see an update to it as well. So maybe I just need to start going to see your vagina monologue shows.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of them are in my closet, but no. I actually do think, side note, I was talking to someone, there might be, sometime this month, it's March, there might be a performance of it. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeing, but you reminded me of it because there's a monologue in it, and it was actually the first time I did vagina monologues. I was a freshman in college, and I was assigned the monologue Reclaiming Cunt. And I was like, I'd never used the word cunt in my life because I was 18. I was like, I've barely heard this word. And every time I've heard it, it's been in a derogatory manner. Yeah. And so that's the whole point of the monologue is let's take this back and make this beautiful and make this mean something else. And you've done that with Too Stupid to Live. Yeah. We all can be too stupid to live listening to it.
Oh,
it's
we all
great.
Are at some point,
Absolutely.
And we're also too smart to die.
For real.
We are all those things.
It's a mishmash of human experience.
So how do you feel about the word cunt? Now, do you?
Honestly, I love the word cunt.
Me too.
I love the word cunt. I love the word twat. I really, I think I use cunt more, and hardly ever do I actually use it to. I feel like I don't know how I use it though, because I don't usually call people that. I guess I guess I would if, like, I'm watching something and I'm just like, what a stupid cunt. Like, but, like, I'll say that about myself, too. Like, I'll just be like, dumb cunt, you. Like, but I'm like, no, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be, but I don't usually say it about my vagina. Like, I don't usually reference a vagina as a cunt, and I guess when I read a romance novel and I hear them use it in it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a spicy one.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I love when they use, when cunt is referred to as a vagina in romance novels. And I think cunt is a very powerful word. I mean, I call my vagina, which is very unsexy.
No, I do too. We actually just were talking about this the other night because my roommate's boyfriend was over and he was cooking us dinner. Mm-hmm. What a man. And we were reading an article from Cosmo, which I'm always kind of like, okay, it's Cosmo. Right. And, but they were talking about all the different words for vagina. And I think there was like 37 of them. And like a few of them you're like, that's stupid. I've never heard that ever. A few of them were very specific to like pop culture references, like you would have heard in a movie or something.
Right, yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm curious, like, where's the list about penises? And so we Googled it, and the first thing that came up was an article that was 505 words for the penis. And I was like, I'm sorry, 505 compared to 37 for vagina? So, I mean, again, I'm just like, I think we need more words for vagina. It's something that I've thought about when reading romance, too, is I'm like, how often do you see something other than pussy, cunt, maybe the occasional twat, and then it gets creative, like her folds, her center, her mound.
Yes. There was one, so I had this thought. There have been a few times where I've seen a vagina referred to as her seam. Her seam, S-E-A-M.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know how I feel about it either, but like literally last week I was like trying to fall asleep, and I was like, oh my God, I don't think I mind a vagina referred to as seam.
Seam?
I mean, would I prefer like pussy or cunt? Yes. But I'm like, you know what? Seam isn't terrible.
Does that mean if you have a penis that you're seamless?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're seamless. Yeah.
That was terrible. I'm so sorry.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I mean it's I don't know. I do love the word cunt.
Yeah.
I guess, but now the more that I think about it, I feel like I would never on the street call someone that. Like I guess when I use it as like a name calling thing, it's more of like my personal, like almost like in a joking or like, what a stupid cunt. You know, like it's something I would never call somebody to their face.
Yeah, I would never do that either. I mean, I think the last time I like really called someone a cunt, like as an insult, was I was like just talking about this old boss who, was really, objectively a terrible person. And I was, like, trying to, like, get across how awful this person was in a conversation, and I couldn't think of any other word because I was feeling riled up other than cunt. And I felt like I regressed back into that person who you have, like, all of this, like, bubbling anger, and we have, like we are programmed to call like someone a pussy for being weak or someone a cocksucker for being weak, and like I don't know, like using those terms which I find so derogatory, and I found myself like, in that same mode of like that anger that people automatically associate with saying the word cunt, and I didn't like that about me. You know what I mean?
So we need to here and now start using cunt specifically for vagina.
For vagina.
That is how we are going to use it. We are not going to call people cunts anymore.
No. Well, you know what would be great is that, like, this is what I don't like, is that, like, people call someone who are brave, they have balls, right?
Yeah.
And I hate that because it's like, balls are the one organ, if you, like, lightly brush them, a man would cower in pain.
And like grab
an idiot. They would be incapacitated, and it's like those things are associated with bravery. But a cunt, I think like it takes a lot of like cunt to do that. I like that.
It takes a lot of cunt.
Yeah, because vaginas are like, I mean, I could talk about this all day, but like vaginas go through a lot. They are wonderful organs, and they can also cause a lot of like pain, but also a lot of joy, and like they are so dynamic, and so they should be associated with like better things, not weakness.
I'm also going to start saying, damn, she got that seam.
Yes.
Yes. She got a strong seam up in there.
Yeah, I respect that seam of
That's
yours,
a good
lady.
seam.
I like your seam.
I seam you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to preface this by saying neither of us have been drinking whatsoever.
No. Yeah, I woke up kind of weird, and so that's where my brain is.
Yeah, there you go. These are the thoughts you have when you host a romance podcast.
I know, and it's like you get to if you get two romance readers into the same room, it's like, your conversations automatically, because we already we don't need to introduce ourselves as romance readers. It's we know, and we are going to go to really on this major tangent.
Exactly. We just know. Well, there you go. And so how can to bring it back full circle, how can somebody check out an episode of Too Stupid to Live? Where can they find you?
Well, it's available on all of your podcasting platforms. My Twitter is TSTL Podcast. The website is tstlpodcast.com. And just Too Stupid to Live. That's the title. Search for it.
Embrace it. Embrace the stupidity. Embrace the cunt. And see that seam.
Yeah.
Yes. I am here for it.
Yes.
So today, Becky and I are going to be discussing the book My Brother's 5 Friends, a reverse harem romance by B.B. Hamel. Oh boy. And this book was published December of 2017 and is available on Amazon for $3.99 Kindle edition. It is also book 1 in the Love Times 5 series. The other books in the Love Times 5 series are 5 Mountain Daddies and My 5 Daddies. Oh my God. I get lots of daddies to go around.
The taboo title of My 5 Daddies.
Yikes. And you know what's, I can't get on board with the whole calling someone daddy thing. I know men who love it. I know women who don't have a problem with it. I happen to call my dad daddy occasionally still. So, for me, I could never say it in a sexy way.
Never, ever. And it's funny you say that because, my mom, when we're just having a conversation, and she, literally yesterday, she was like, well, Daddy and I went to Costco. Yes. And I'm like, oh, God, that's what I would think of.
I know, and that's exactly how in my house, we refer to each other. My dad will be like, oh, well, Mom did this, and my mom will be like, well, Daddy went here, da, da, da. Yeah. So, it's always been in our household, we all call them Mommy and Daddy, or Mom and Dad. So, that is always, it's like if somebody was like, oh, yeah, Mama, I'd be like, no, nope, no. I don't want anybody to call me Mom or Mommy. Oh, unless it's a child. No, I don't even want that. I like dogs. You know, so.
If I had kids, I'd be like, you're going to call me Miss Feldman.
Yeah. I will forever be Miss Feldman to you, Becky, if I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to approach me with respect, you child.
Perfect. And so, obviously, this is the part where I normally would ask my guests, is this the first romance novel you've read? We obviously know that that's not going to be a yes from you. This is, one of many. However, because you are on Boobies and Noobies, I did ask you if there was something that you hadn't really read before, if there was a specific subgenre of romance you wanted to, tackle a little bit more. And this was, you suggested a reverse harem romance. And we actually are going to be putting out a bonus Boobies mini episode on our Patreon account where Becky and I discuss a little bit more the whole topic of reverse harem, just because it's kind of an outdated term, not something that I feel like we really should be using to discuss these books.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject to think about.
Yeah. But it's definitely warrants a lot more discussion. And so if you do support us on Patreon or you want to hear that discussion, I strongly suggest you, kick us a buck or two, whatever. Then I can buy Becky a coffee for her time. Get a better microphone. Get a new apartment away from the children playing outside my door.
They're just listening in. They're like, I can't wait to hear about these.
I know.
5 friends.
These are going to be the kids that live in my apartment building are going to be the ones that start a podcast in 15 years and are like, oh, how did you learn about romance? Well, you know, my neighbor, she did a romance podcast out of the living room of her apartment, and we would just listen all day long.
Yeah, we would just be breathing onto that window, and it was like, yeah.
I would love to be the one that inspires someone to listen in because they just think it's so juicy. Like, the person who has, like, super loud sex that you're like, oh, yeah, we gotta listen to them. Like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, like, it's not...
Or just a podcast about loud sex. Whatever.
That's out there, right?
So anyway, this is a subgenre that you hadn't really read before?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've certainly read erotica and erotica that involves group sex.
Sure.
And, but never in the terms of, like, for better or for worse, like a polyamorous relationship that wasn't a throuple. It was more than 3.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, no, I had never done that. I've never read that.
Yeah, and I've read a handful. It's so funny, too, because I feel like normally if you're looking for... It's not unusual to read a romance with multiple partners in the story. I feel like a lot of times you'll get... A threesome is easy to come by in a romance novel, but it's usually like... a 1 or 2 time thing. Like, it's still focused on a specific couple and they bring somebody in and out of the relationship. Like, it's more of a fantasy that they want to play out.
Yeah.
And then I feel like beyond that, I've seen a lot of books where it's like 1 woman and 2 men. And I've seen a lot of books where it jumps from that to 1 woman and 5 men.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen beyond 5. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I feel like 5 is a handful.
It's a handful, and I mean, you know, there were parts in the book where, like, you know, towards the sex, it was kind of funny because it was, I would imagine the same thing. She's like, I don't even know who was sucking on my tits, but it was great. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I feel like I've never had a 5-6 way, but I think I'd feel the same way. It's just like hard, like, whose hand is that? And, yeah, so, yeah, that was the first time I read, like, something like that. Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of the idea for anybody who's never read what they call a reverse harem romance is this idea of, you know, it's 1 woman at the center surrounded by a group of men, and it's not necessarily that the men have any relationship with each other, like, or any sexual or romantic relationship. It's usually that we'll say in this case, all 5 of them are so devoted to her. And so, you know, sometimes they all have sex, but it's never like the men being with each other.
No.
It's always like focused on her pleasure. It's all for her. You know, however we can service you. Maybe it's a couple of us at a time. Maybe it's all of us at once tending to different parts of you. And
some waiting in the wings,
yeah,
you know,
exactly, waiting their turn, you know, warming up, stretching. And so that's kind of the idea for anybody that's like wondering what a reverse harem story is. And again, it's not a term I personally love, and we'll discuss that in our bonus boobies episode because it would just take too much time right here.
For sure.
So before we talk about the book itself, let me give everyone a brief synopsis, and this comes directly from Amazon.com, so enjoy. When I get evicted from my apartment, I move in with my older brother in his ocean view mansion, and he has other guests. 5 sexy as hell, dirty, rich guests, to be exact. Some of them remember when I was just a little girl, and some of them only care about the woman I've become. I don't remember any of that.
They don't remember.
That's not true.
Uh-oh.
That's a lie. But all of them keep staring at me with that look, the one that makes my whole body tremble with desire. My brother would freak if he found out that I want to taste all of his friends, and I can't afford to be homeless. I'm sorry, that was a twist. But my 5 men definitely aren't stopping, and I can't say no when they sneak into my room in the middle of the night, half dressed, their hands on my skin. this is not like a specific scene that they're referencing.
Yeah.
There might be something here, something even deeper than the way their touch pushes me to my limits. The craziest part is they don't mind if they're sharing me, and I don't mind getting passed between them from one ripped guy to the next. Ooh, what a perfect way to close on that.
I know, yeah, like, that's the fantasy right there.
Yeah. So I will say, this is one of those books where I think you could definitely get caught up in the fantasy of a story like this, because I'm sure people do have relationships like this in real life.
Yeah.
Obviously they do. Like, we have, TV shows like, what's the one with it's like one guy and like 4 wives, and they're polygamous
Yes.
relationships.
Yeah.
And then we have polyamorous relationships, and we have, what's the other one?
Polyandry.
Polyandry.
Which I imagine this is what's the closest to
Yeah,
it.
same.
Although, like, traditionally polyandry is marriage. Like, it's marriage or marriage ceremony.
So I'm curious if, like, our main character, Emily, like, if it got to the point where, like, she was going to marry these guys, like, would she marry all 5? Or is it, like, you're married to one, and then, like, the other ones you have, like, your little, mini ceremony with, but, like, you're not legally married to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I can definitely see where this is something that's maybe a little farther from the realm of, like, the typical relationship. So, like, if you are looking for a romance that's, like, very fantasy driven about a group of men dedicated to one woman and her needs and her fantasies, then this would be exciting. Like, not even necessarily this specific book, but just this style of story. Because overall, considering that there are 5 men here to service one woman, I was very disappointed with the amount of sexual content that was happening. Like, I thought they were going to be going balls to the wall, literally.
Yes.
And they don't even have, like, penetrative... Did I say that right?
Penetrative.
Penetrating?
Penetrating? But there
Is penetrative... That's a word.
I think it's a word.
Again, things we think about. Penetrative... They don't have penetrating sex until, like, 70% of the way through the book.
That was, like, really disappointing.
Yeah. It just... And you know what? I've read other reverse harem stories, and it's never... I don't think I've ever had to wait that long for that. And this is one of those stories where you are a lot more focused on getting to the sex as opposed to the story itself.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like, this book is a one-handed read. Like, we know what we're getting into,
Exactly.
And,
like, I'm not reading this for, like, the next great love story.
No.
I don't think... And I will say that I did feel like B.B. Hamel put certain things into it. Like, I thought there was actually a lot of thought put into the male characters in this book that I found really fascinating, that I haven't seen and didn't expect to read in a reverse harem story.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like one-handed book. Yeah, that's definitely. But my other hand was, like, bored.
Turning the pages. Yeah. Like, was scratching my head. Yeah, I mean, like, there were the makings of, like, a really interesting story. Yes, this is, like, more on the erotica side of the spectrum.
Oh, for sure.
But, so, like, so I feel like I have notes, I guess, but like, there were really interesting elements to the story, and really, like, empowering elements and fascinating elements that maybe didn't have the amount of follow through.
It was also a short story. We should clarify that, right? Like, it wasn't. Short, I don't think they classified it as a novella on Amazon, but it definitely was a very, very quick read. Okay, it's 215 pages, Kindle
short
edition, according to Amazon.com, and that's what I just remember as I was reading it, and I looked in the table of contents to see the chapter headings, because I noticed that it started from Emily's point of view, and it's labeled as Emily. So then you look through the table of contents, and, like, this was also a little different, is every chapter was, like, either her point of view or one of the guys' point of views. And I feel like I haven't seen that in a lot of the reverse harems I've read. Like, it's always been a lot more about her or if it's like a threesome, they'll do it. But that's a lot of characters to each give their own point of view.
Yeah.
And so I will say, I do think BB Hamel did a good job of basically creating each character to be their own person.
Yeah.
Like, each of the guys has their own profession, which, okay,
they're all filthy.
Down. Yeah, they're all filthy rich and successful. I started making notes, like, as I was reading through, because they started saying, like, oh, well, he's this, and he's... So, I mean, you kind of identify them a lot by what they do as opposed to, like, their personality. Like, that was the one thing, is a lot of their personality doesn't really happen.
Yeah, they were all, like, interchangeable.
Yeah.
I will say, like, what was smart on BB Hamel's behalf was each guy was a fantasy guy.
Yes,
like, they all
for sure.
Like, all of these guys, like, they were all, like, the different puzzle pieces of what, like, women find, like, fantastical.
Like, if you took like a BuzzFeed quiz that's like, what's your ideal perfect man? And like the results would be one of these guys. Like, you would get James is the artist. He's like the sensitive. I feel like he was probably the most developed of the male characters. That we saw multiple times. There was a lot of discussion with him.
Mm-hmm. He was in agony a lot. I liked Carter, who's the physicist.
Yeah, but he was the physicist at like a university, but he definitely
out here, at Caltech.
Yeah, but he was kind of like the wild child too, wasn't he? The one that was like, Daniel was the one.
Daniel's the poker player.
Daniel's the professional poker player, and he's clearly more of like the ladies' man. Like, it's kind of inferred.
He's the one, like, and he was like, had trouble, like, you know, like, was drinking a lot. Like, he had issues going on.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely had, like, a checkered past.
I personally liked Aiden, who's the sensitive construction worker.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great fun.
And what's also great about that was, like, they were like, listen, they really make a point that he pays his employees fair wages.
Yeah. No, I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Ryan, who's the professional tennis player. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, clearly, and not only is, like, he a tennis player, James is an artist, Daniel's a poker player, they're all very successful. Like, they make it very clear that all these guys have a ton of money to spend. And the way that they all know each other is they all know Emily's brother, which is, what's his name?
His name is Henry.
And
he's a Bitcoin billionaire or something like that. Like, he's
Henry,
rich as fuck.
So interesting. And so I feel like it was a lot of them met in college, and then they kind of like picked up a few of the other guys. So they basically have like this group of 6 of them, including Emily's brother, Henry, who's like complete douchebag.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole other bag of worms.
He's an interesting cat. Oh, yeah.
So those are our men. And then Emily is a college student. She's I think about to be a senior. They say she's 21, right?
Yeah.
So she's about to go into her final year of college. And she gets evicted from her apartment for, like, no reason.
Yeah, her landlord was cooking meth in the basement.
Which somehow means she gets evicted. I don't get that.
I don't understand Pennsylvania-based housing laws, but I'll take their word for it.
Oh, yeah, where were they supposed to be?
Well, interesting.
At the beach.
She goes to University of Pennsylvania, which is, in Philadelphia, and that's near where I grew up, and I think she was in Atlantic City. So it was kind of...
okay.
I was like, oh, cool.
I was trying to figure out where they went to the beach, because I was like, I don't know enough about the East Coast to know, like, if you're in Pennsylvania, where does your rich-ass brother buy a beach house?
Well, if you're a rich-ass brother, obviously Malibu still, but if you were on the East Coast, it would be like Atlantic City area, I think, southern shore,
So then the complication for me with this big relationship that Emily, the complication, as if there's one.
Yeah.
But
really?
all these guys live in and work in completely different places. Like, I feel like most of the relationships I've read like this in the past, they've been brothers. Usually, it's usually been a group of brothers that then, like, fall in love with the same woman. So they're all, like, a little more connected. Like, they have to be together. Like, they're family, And this one, it's like one of them lives in LA, one of them's in Seattle, one of them's in Manhattan. Like, so I just kept thinking, I'm like, okay, how is this going to work? Like, I'm just imagining maybe this book will just be like this summer fling romance. Like, and it's just going to be like this hot story, and then they all go their separate ways. Like, I might have been okay with that.
Oh, yeah. I think that could have been a really cute story. Like, it could have been like this, this really cute weekend of this woman, summer of this woman, like, exploring her sexuality and, like, finding her sexual power.
Right.
Which, you still have that. But, one long distance relationship is hard. Having one person so she's gonna have five long distance relationships.
Yeah, because we'll get to how we get to the ending, but just to clue everyone in, at the end, they all decide that they're gonna be together, and they're buying an apartment or like a giant ass house.
Yeah, or
right?
it's like a mansion. It's like a mansion in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, which she will live in as she goes to her final year of college, because mind you, she's still a college student. And I think these guys are they're
in the 30s. They're like late 20s, 30s.
Late 20s, early 30s. So, I mean, they're older. They have careers. They have lives. Yeah. And they're willing to basically buy this house for her to live in with whoever's available. And then the other guys will, like, travel for work. And, like, when they all happen to be in town, great. And when they're not, she will always have somebody. So, I mean, I guess it kind of works out, especially for her. Like, I mean, it works out great for Emily. But, it's definitely interesting. It's a relationship that's like something I would never aspire to have, just because that's just so many people to worry about and think about and have to deal with all the time. But I guess it also kind of has the benefits of a long distance relationship too, where when you do see them, you're like, oh my God, the moments we get to spend together are magical, because we don't get them enough. But I almost wonder, like, what would happen if, like, all 6 of them are living in a house all the time together, like how that would work out. I mean,
it's like there's so many complications that you think, like, one is like you don't have space for yourself, but then also, like, let's say, who is it? Ryan. Let's say Ryan is like on this tour, like, it's tennis season or whatever,
right?
And like, what if he's like out on tour and like there's jealousy issues? It's like the other 4 of them are with her all the time and he misses her, or like there's going to be, like, in the real world, there's going to be a shit ton of complications.
Oh, sure.
Obviously, that's not in this book because everything's perfect. And we like that. I need that. I need that in my life.
Exactly.
But yes, there's, like, so many issues that I'm sure come with a polyandrous relationship.
That's part of the complication of this book, too, is that because it's so short and you kind of have, like, this double fantasy. You have, like, that it's the vacation fling.
Yeah.
And then you have that it's multiple men. And so, but it's such a short amount of time that she's spending at this beach house with all these guys that you're kind of like, wow, you guys are putting all your eggs in her basket.
Yeah.
Like, for sure. And so... yeah. So, I mean, it was a lot of, I have a hard time with the romances where they hang out for a few days and then they're like, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together.
Yeah.
And I know some people love the whole, love at first sight thing. So if that's your thing, this is definitely one of those stories where they are like enamored of her immediately. And I hate myself for saying it, but I was like, why? Like, there were just, because I guess what it was is I felt like B.B. Hamel took so much time to tell us about each of the guys and kind of paint who each of them was. And we see Emily with each of them individually, and we see them, as groups too. But I didn't really understand who Emily was.
Yeah.
Like, I never really, she didn't really seem like she had a passion or a goal she was working towards. It's like this half-hearted story about how she's excited to go stay with her brother because, like, they never really had a relationship growing up, which I really loved that element. Like,
that was great. Yeah.
Henry is the older brother, but he's so much older that, like, when she was a kid, they never would have, like, hung out.
Right, yeah.
And so she's going to stay with him and, like, oh, this is my chance to get to know him. And he kind of says the same thing, too. So I was like, oh, well, this will be interesting.
It's an interesting arc that never gets fulfilled.
Never.
Because, like, there is, like, something to, like, the idea of, like, making up for lost time between them. And, like, but at the same time, like, it's a party house. Like, you know, basically all these guys are here with Henry for the summer. Every day's a party. And, like...
Every night is a theme party. They have so many fucking theme parties. Yeah. It's insane.
And, like, Henry makes this bet. He's like, hey, bros, like, I'll give you, like, whoever, like, gets the most pussy this summer gets $1 million.
Yeah, that was weird, too. That so setup weird. Just did not pay off at all.
No, it didn't pay off. And again, like, and it could have. Like, that's the thing. Like, it could have paid off. And it could have been very, like, empowering for Emily.
Yeah.
But it just, again, didn't get fulfilled. And, but with Henry, like, here he is, like, taking Emily in and, like, wanting to, like, you know, build a better relationship with her. Yet here, but then, like, he's always, like, leaving the room with, like, 2 gals from the party. Like, he's not there for Emily.
It was weird. I kept thinking, like, he had, like, a secret story going on or something, like, that we just weren't hearing about, because it was like it always felt like he was disappearing or like going somewhere, and I'm like, where's he going? Like, what's going on? Like, so I kept thinking there was gonna be more to his storyline, because he also seems like he's maybe going through like a depression or something. And then the whole idea of like him betting the guys that I bet all of you, like, and I will give... It was weird. It was like... It was a really weird bet just in terms of bets. Like, he promised the winner who had the most sex... Oh, no. Sex with the most women. $1 million. Which was... It was like it was himself versus all the other guys.
Right.
And then they had to give him, like, their most prized possessions, which, by the way, are stupid.
It's
like,
stupid.
One of them, I'm like... Okay, one of them is, like, this vintage car that one of the guys has had for years, and he like fixed it up. I'm like, okay, but again, is it worth $1 million? Probably not.
No, and it's like, how emotionally manipulative is that? Like, where you were gonna like take something that your friend likes? Like, fuck that.
Well, and then the other guys, though, I was just like, I feel like they have zero stakes, because one of, like, for Ryan, the tennis player, it's that he has to give Henry tennis lessons.
Yeah, like, what?
I'm like, does that really affect you that much?
Yeah.
Like, it was a weird... I felt like you could take the bet element out of the story completely, and nothing... It wouldn't matter.
Well, here's what I think. Like, if I were to get, like... Okay, if I were to... It's hard for me, like, you know, like, being out in Los Angeles and being a writer to, like, not be like, here's how I would write it.
Yeah.
But,
go for it. You tell me.
Here's what I think. What would have been great is, like, if the bet were, like, something along the lines of how many times did you have sex?
Yeah.
And all the guys are, like... You know, like, the 5 friends are kind of, like, fucking this up because, like, they could be getting pussy, but, like, no, they're having, you know, sex with Emily. Henry is on his journey to have sex. And who ends up winning is Emily. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's like, a great ending.
Like, who has the most amount of sex?
That would be a much more comedic take on it, too.
It would have been so cute.
That was the other thing, is this book is not really funny or playful. Like, no. I feel like it kept getting really sad, because... A lot of the scenes, especially in the first half of the book, are Emily spending time with one of the guys, like, one-on-one, and her getting, like, their sad-ass backstory.
Yeah.
And I'm like, on the one hand, that's fantastic that they each have a story, because she doesn't. And the other hand... It was that they talked a lot. Like, it was...
God, yes.
I can't figure out why... they were falling in love with her when all she did most of the book was sit there and listen to them bitch about their problems. And she would be like, yeah, that's tough. Oh, I understand. Oh, your art is great. Like, I mean, there was like no connection. I didn't feel like a romantic connection between any of them. Like, I feel like the closest for me was maybe her and James, because I did feel like her and James had more time together, and they talked a lot more as opposed to like hooking up too. Yeah. So I kind of saw more happening with the two of them. That could have been a good twist to the story too.
For sure. And like there was one moment, I think it was like she had this like one very poignant moment that was an interesting part of her character that we won't really see again, is she's having a conversation with Daniel, who's the poker player.
Yeah.
And she asks him this question of like, well, what happens when you lose?
When you lose,
And
yeah.
he's like, oh, like, no one's ever asked me that. It's usually when I win. And she says something, like, pretty intelligent of, like, you know, oh, it's interesting what happens when people lose and they still go on.
Right, like,
the
how do they
challenges in their
respond to
lives.
it?
And, like, what an interesting thing to say. It could have been so, like, indicative of her own life, you know, with her background, with her brother, with her living situation.
Yeah.
But again, we don't see that. We just, like, move on to the next scene where, like, the physicist is, like, mansplaining light to her or whatever the fuck. And it's
that
like,
was
ugh.
stupid. That whole story.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, so besides, James was the one that, like, if I had to pick any of them to date, I guess I would date James. Like, he's more of, like, although he's very broody, he's, like, the broody artist. But I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess I live in LA, I'm a writer, actor, fine.
No, we get it. Like, we gravitate towards sensitive souls. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, and then what was interesting too is, remember how I told you how I checked out the different chapter titles?
Yeah.
So I was like, not all of them get the same amount of time either. Like, that's the other thing is, like, I think it was Daniel. Daniel only got one chapter that was his POV. Like, but then, like, James or Carter had, like, 3. So I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. It was a weird divide.
Well, it's interesting because, like, you know, if I had, like, a dream man, like, I would want a smart scientist or an artist who weren't dicks.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, would I want a poker player boyfriend, though? I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think maybe,
I don't know.
I don't know. I went on a date with a professional poker player, and he was such a turnoff, so maybe that's my thing. Maybe poker players are my sharks.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Card sharks.
Card sharks. I
Done.
just don't like sharks, man.
We made that connection.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we
That's weird. Oh my God, it's so psychological. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, here's my thing about, in general, until somebody has sex in this book, there is a lot of men talking and a lot of her listening and not really adding a lot to the conversation, and then her blowing them. Yeah. And that's like, there's a lot of oral sex in this book.
So
like,
much oral
and they go
sex.
down on her too. So I'm like, okay, fine. But it's definitely, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Just back and forth. And again, not a very equal share, because I definitely made in my notes that Ryan was, like, getting, you know, another blowjob when, like, James hadn't gotten anything yet.
Right,
I was like, this doesn't seem fair. Like, just one more thing that you would have to work out in this relationship, right?
Yeah.
Is, like, maybe you don't. I mean, isn't that why people have polyamorous relationships? Is people think, like, they just do it because they need to have sex with more people. But I think the whole reason people have polyamorous relationships is so they can get different things from different people that they might not be getting from one partner.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, that was something that I was like, if that's the case, I'd love for them to discuss that, or, like, make a point of that. Like, maybe James is the one she doesn't have as much sex with, or maybe it's they have the sensitive, sweet, making love sex, and you know, the other guy is, like, pound her in the bathroom. Like, that's fine. Like,
it's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely, I felt like there was a lot of pointless conversations and you know, just and it would go from that to blowjobs, and I'd be like, oh, why? Like, I feel like this just is not a natural progression.
It's not. And, like, I think what you were saying before about, like, you know, trying to keep track is, like, I think, like, I you know, I'm a people pleaser. I think a lot of people are people pleasers, and so it's like, oh my God, they're going down on me. I gotta, like, remember to, like, reciprocate. And it's like, oh wait, like, you don't like that. What a hard thing to keep track of if you have, you know, five.
Right.
I'd be keeping, like, an Excel spreadsheet in my brain.
Yeah, like, okay,
Monday.
Monday was Ryan's blowjob. Tuesday was, you know, double penetration with Carter and James.
And my mouth was more on James and Carter. So next time the two of them, my mouth would be on Carter than James.
Friday's the group day. You know.
Okay, I'll just make sure I'm well rested for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done, but you're right. I mean, an Excel sheet would, oh God, organization's so sexy.
It is sexy.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I feel like a lot of my notes that I had to do with either the weird conversations they were having. Like at one point, I forget which guy it is, but I think this is at one of the parties they're having, and there's literally like a pig roasting, like a full pig.
They're having a luau.
Yeah. Which I have to say, I am a fan of theme parties, so I will give these guys credit that they know how to have a good time.
Oh, yeah, they were creative for sure. Go Henry.
Yeah. And, but one of the guys, like, she says something like, oh, how does it look? How does the pig look? And he says, oh, no. I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He looks away from it and grins at me. Except you, of course. Oh. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, he did not just like compare her to the beauty of like a roasting pig.
Yeah, like I would have been like, oh, like fuck you, man. I'm gonna go to these other 4 guys.
Yeah.
Till you learn how to speak good.
There were a lot of conversations like that where I'm just like, wait, what? Like, they talk about, at one point she does, like, the Titanic thing with one guy, right? Where they're, like, standing, you know, he's, like, holding her from behind, I'm flying, Jack. Like, but he literally is like, yeah, let's do Titanic. I'm like, I'm done with you. This relationship's over.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's like, do you know what I don't know.
So stupid. The other thing that I definitely had a problem with was this just ongoing story that didn't happen with Henry, with the brother. And it's not even just between him and Emily, his sister, but also between him and his friends, because I think what it was that they make it seem like it's going to be such a problem, like that his friends are attracted to her and they all want to be with her, because they have a couple conversations with Henry. And, you know, the first one, Henry's like, hey, none of you hit on my sister, you know. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I expected that. Fine. Then it becomes, he has a conversation with one of the guys, probably James, because he's like the understanding one that can, I think it's James.
It was James or Aiden, I think.
Okay. Aiden, the sensitive construction worker. So it's one of the two
pays fair wages.
Nice... pays fair wages. It's one of the 2 nice guys. Oh, yeah. And they say something like, hey, you know, just, you know, I am into your sister. Yes. And I think they also allude to the fact, like, it's not just me. Like, some of the other guys.
They're open with it.
Yeah, like, they really, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. So, because I was, like, thinking with Henry, he was either going to be, like, the complete asshole where he's like just a bad person, so it's okay if he like cuts them out of his life, like, and nobody will like, you know, have a problem. Or he's gonna be like have trouble understanding, but then in the end, like, oh well, I these are my friends, I love my sister, this gives us something, you know, that, you know, I can accept, that even maybe if like their parents couldn't, but he could, I mean, it would have just done so much for their relationship, like, because that's the other thing, is they set up how both of them want this connection as brother and sister. And then in the end, Henry, you know, is calling her a slut and a whore, and the guys, you know, leave, and he doesn't talk to them anymore, and he doesn't talk to his sister anymore. And so it just, it all falls apart. And then there's zero resolution or follow-up with Henry at the end.
And that was insanely tragic. And I think that was like what was really kind of needed in this novel, because like at the end of the day, like, Henry more or less represents a society that only believes in monogamy, that cannot open their minds to, like, you know, alternative, for lack of a better word, lifestyle. Yeah. So if like these lovers were able to change Henry's mind, like, that is like symbolic of like real people changing the minds of those that they love and getting those that they love to accept their lifestyle.
And even if they weren't, because they are really close friends of his, but they are just his friends. Even if they weren't able to change his mind, his sister should have been able to. Like, that, the fact that it's not just friends, but that it's friends who are making his sister happy. Yeah. And the sister that he's wanted to connect to. And even though he does have that weird the meltdown, like, that you would expect of, like, this is wrong, this is, you know, not how it should be. Like, there was still no ending. Like, that's the last time you see Henry. Like, there's no ending where he, you know, sees his sister again and says, you know what, I don't understand it, I don't get it, but I love you.
That's what you
That's
want.
all I needed.
And, like, I think, like, you know, thinking about, like, what defines the genre of romance, like obviously Happily Ever After, we all know that, but it's also like a predominantly like there's a positive story.
Yeah.
And I think like unconditional love, it
Right.
is positive, and the fact that like we didn't get like we don't see this. I mean, even though this is not the romance obviously isn't between the sibling love, but like,
yeah,
you want, like, part of a happily ever after is having those who unconditionally love you accept your lifestyle and accept who you're with. And the fact that we don't get that really just is really hurting the book. It's hurting the story.
And you know what? I have read stories before where like, like I'm thinking of one specifically that is a polyamorous relationship between a woman and two men, and there's definitely problems with like her family accepting it, and but even in the end you get the idea that like they could like or like they're on the way to accepting it, or they accept her, so like by proxy they have to accept, you know, the people she's with or whatever. But so there was no follow through, like it seemed like it was just, you know, the beginning of like I almost thought like, even is there a second story to this book, like, which I don't like stories when they're broken up into multiple books.
We don't have time for that. No.
It's not for me.
No, I don't have money for that. That's
right, but you know what, occasionally there have been ones where like I've read it not knowing that it's part of like a 2-part story, and I will read the second story and be like, okay, thank God, like they, you know, they tied it up, it's fine, you know. But this one, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. It was kind of sad. Like, it makes me think of...
It was significantly sad.
Do you watch, it's so funny, it's not going to make sense at first, but have you ever watched, like, Project Runway?
Yes.
Okay, when Michael Kors was one of the judges, that would be something he would say about outfits. He'd be like, you know, it's a little sad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a sad outfit. And it's something that shouldn't be, you know? And that's kind of how I felt about this book in general, was like, it's not like people are dying or like their backstories are like super traumatic or anything, but it just, there was never really any joy. Like, there wasn't as much fun and dating and like the silly fun and games that you usually see in a romance.
Yeah.
So
it was just, we were always reminded of the stakes. And I will say this, like, there are, like, obviously wealth, it plays a huge part into the fantasy of this book. And it's like...
Again, there's fantasy part 3, is the billionaires.
Exactly, and it's like, that's something we want. It's like a huge, people read that, we love that. And I think, like, the author does do a good job of, like, you know, providing that, like, those elements of, like, you know, marrying a billionaire.
Sure.
And I think she focuses too much on those elements that we're kind of missing, like, the interpersonal elements of the fantasy of, like, you know, like, it felt like in the end, like, Emily was kind of almost like lying to herself of like, I have this beautiful house, I have these 5 beautiful men, but she also, like, we don't see her finding her own identity.
No, and there's like nothing about that.
To me, it was that. And also, like, I mean, I hate to, like, you know, think about, like, how this would be in real life, but she's 23, and like, to like,
was she? I thought she was only 21
or 21, or like however old she is. Like, you know, you're young 20s, and it's like,
now it definitely takes a while to get there, but I feel like we have to talk a little bit about the sexual content. And if you have a specific excerpt or scene or moment that you'd like to share, I know I made notes of a few.
Okay. I don't want to like read something that you wanted to read though, because I have 2 parts that I thought were pretty interesting.
Well, we have a lot. Okay, there's 2 standouts for me in this story. Like,
we might have
there's a lot of oral sex. So for me, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But there is a specific scene with a hairbrush.
I thought it was a paintbrush.
Paintbrush.
No, that's a great scene.
It is a paintbrush. I don't know why I thought. No, because it's with the artist, right?
It's James. James has his lucky paintbrush.
Yeah,
and by the way, I was
makes her get lucky with.
I was talking about the scene. I'm writing a script with a writing partner, and we spent the majority of the day talking about this scene because I was like, listen.
Right.
Someone fucks her with a paintbrush, and she was just like, okay, I need to wrap my head around this for a second. And then we just, like, all day we're talking about the dynamics of being fucked.
So, okay, no, that was one. Yeah. And then the second one was, I don't remember if it was the first time she had anal sex or if it was when, because there's one scene with all of them together.
That's the final.
Yeah, that's the final one.
Scene.
I don't even think that's the one that I marked. I marked the one that I want to say is probably the first time she has some sort of double penetration.
And that was a really great scene, in my opinion. I thought that was like really well done.
Although the note I made was there's no mention of condoms or lube.
That was a problem.
Like,
and what is your opinion on this? Because I know that it's like, I can go either way. I know people have like very strong opinions on condom use.
If they're having anal sex, I'm sorry, I need to hear some sort of mention about condoms and lube.
Yeah,
like, if there is no lube in an anal sex scene, you might as well just go home. Like, it's not happening. But I don't think you have to mention birth control in romance or sex scenes or erotica, but I feel like it's almost something that I see as a standard now in a lot of stories that I do read, that because I see it as a standard, I've become so accustomed to it. I appreciate it. And then when it's not there, it does stand out to me as not being there. Although a lot of people, I don't know if this has happened on Too Stupid to Live, but a lot of people that I've had on this show have, remarked about how, oh my gosh, I was so impressed when I saw that they mentioned him putting on a condom, or they had the conversation about how she's on the pill. And I was like, yeah, it's sexy, isn't it? Like, so I personally appreciate that, and I would love to see it in every romance, just because I feel like in any relationship where you are having sex with somebody, that's a conversation you should have. And I know some people say, oh, well, that takes you out of the fantasy. And I'm like, no. I don't know. If I can have this conversation with somebody and then have incredible sex with them, I don't know what's not fantastic about that. So
I mean, it's interesting. Like, I'm the same way. Like, I'm used to seeing condoms, being used, birth control being used in romance. And whenever I don't see it, like in this scene, I was just like, oh, okay, and I'm not too like put off by it, because like when I first started reading, like like there were condoms, and it was like, okay, it's fine. But it's so funny. I ended up being like really into condoms in scenes where I was just like reading this one book, and like I was like, oh, is this awkward? Is this awkward? But there was one part where the guy puts the condom still in the wrapper, like in the woman's mouth, and to like help with foreplay, she sits on his face as the condom is in her mouth, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's really hot. And then like they use it and like put it on and then have great sex.
I love seeing how not only people are using condoms in these scenes, but that the authors are varying up how they put the condoms on or in what, fashion it happens. Like, I love when, like, it'll be in the woman's mouth and she, like, slides it down his dick.
Which is amazing, which I, side note, want to figure out how to do myself.
Right. Or just the fact when it is a woman that puts it on a man, in a heterosexual romance, which is majority of what I do read.
Sure, yeah.
I love when the woman is the one to put it on him. Like, I think that's so sexy. Like, there's just this layer of confidence and trust there that, as opposed to like the guy putting it on himself. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine too, where it's like it's getting hot. You see one sentence, condoms on, and here we go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, great, we're done.
It doesn't have to be this whole production. But that being said, she has anal sex for the first time. She has group sex for the first time, and there is no mention of condoms or lube. Yeah. So I was displeased.
And they didn't eat, like usually, like, you put a few fingers in before you put the, someone's dick in your butt. And like, you don't have that. And she even says, like, I've never done it before. And it's like, it's fine. And then it's like, oh yeah, it is. But that said, I did like that scene.
Yeah. So here, I'll read. I'll do a quick excerpt from the scene, and this is right when she says, "I've never had that before," meaning I've never had something in my ass before. And they say, "We'll help you," and it goes from there. But there's like you said, there's no preparation whatsoever. Yeah. So we'll go from. I feel Aiden push me forward, spreading my ass wide open, and I feel his cock start to tease me. I don't know, I gasp. Are you sure you can fit? I'm sure, he says, and I feel him press against me. He slowly sinks into my ass, and I gasp. I'm just like, girl, it's not happening that easy. No. Like, it's not going to happen. Pleasure and pain move through my body, and I grab onto Carter's shoulders. Okay, so Carter's already inside her vag.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So now we're double penetrating here.
Yeah.
Ryan tips my chin up toward him. You can take those cocks, he says softly. Go ahead, just relax. Easier said than done, Ryan.
I
Let's see you
know.
take those cocks.
Yeah.
I bite my lips, but I relax. Aiden slowly sinks into my ass just as Carter presses himself inside of me again. Suddenly, this is where like the inner narration just kills me.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I realize that I have a cock in my ass and one in my pussy like I've never felt before. I'm so full I can barely stand it. The guys both start to fuck me and I take Ryan's dick between my lips. I'm fucked in every single hole now. My mouth, my pussy, and my ass. And it's incredible. We move as one, fucking me deep and rough as I suck Ryan's cock. We're groaning, sweating, fucking, one big sweating mass of bodies. It almost sounds like a poem. Like, just like sweating, fucking, groaning. A lot of
like a poetry slam.
Yeah, here we go. Here's more. Pleasure, pain, intensity.
Yeah.
It's all there. She definitely, BB Hamel likes her like groups of three, like her like rule of three. Like, this is a threesome. There is like 3 adjectives at a time.
No, yeah, she definitely gets, like, it's funny. I was like reading and I'm like, oh, she definitely gets like rules of comedy of like heightening.
Yeah.
Adding more
Although
on.
I'm like, is it supposed to be funny? I don't think so.
No, it's like pattern based.
I'll end you with this line. Oh no, you know what? There's 2. These are both great.
No, please.
All I care about is getting fucked by my men, sucking Ryan's cock, getting them off, getting myself off. It's the most controlled and stuffed I've ever felt before in my life. I don't like that specific word choice.
The word stuffed is so weird.
Do you think of a turkey? I think of a turkey.
Yeah, or no, I'm thinking of like, I do think, yes, that I just think of like eating a large meal and you know you like
I'm
eat,
stuffed.
and you eat too much and it's like that discomfort of like eating too much.
Yeah, no,
like,
well, especially since they already made a reference to how she's beautiful, like the pig on the stick. I'm just like, okay, that with stuffed, like, no,
not good,
not gonna happen for me. But yeah, so that's the first time. I think that's the first scene we get.
That's the first time
actual penetrative sex.
Yeah.
So it's a good scene. I mean, I definitely don't think read cock as many times in a row. Like it's definitely got the graphic like cock, pussy, clit. You know, so. There's no holding back with the you know what I don't think I mentioned this. I did find this interesting that, and then you can, dazzle us with some of your reading. I did find it interesting that it seemed like none of these guys had shared a woman before. Right. Like I feel like in a lot of reverse harem stories, it'll be like buddies who, have they double team a girl all the time. Right, or like we've had threesomes, we've done this before. Or, something like they've at least had like anal sex before, but it seemed like with this relationship that all the guys were just as new to this idea of sharing a woman as Emily was, which I honestly found refreshing. Like, I feel like that's not something I've read as much. Usually they seem so sure of themselves. Like that's kind of the alpha way. But that you kind of had a mix of alpha and beta men.
You did.
In this, which is nice. Like you said earlier, these guys, each one of them is like that kind of personality that's like an ideal fantasy man for a woman. Like, so you're definitely going to be attracted to at least one of them, probably. Like that, will tickle your fancy.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, how about you? Did you wanna dive into the paintbrush scene?
Okay, I do have that paintbrush scene. Oh wait, I can read that one, but I have this other. Okay.
You read whatever you want, girl.
There's this one scene that I really liked, and I thought it was like kind of the most important scene in the book.
Okay.
I think. Well, we'll see. Okay, so this is when I think this is with Aiden. They are in the pool, and
yep.
And it's just her and Aiden, and okay, so they're starting to go at it, and this is from Aiden's point of view, I think. Yeah, one of the guys. Okay. I slide my left hand down the front of her bikini bottoms. She adjusts slightly, opening her legs. I find her pussy and it's soaking wet. Exactly what I thought. I move down and kiss her neck as I start to tease her pussy. I press 2 fingers slowly inside of her, making her moan. "Oh shit," she says. "Oh shit, wait, Aiden." I stop. "What's wrong?" She pulls back and looks at me. "Go get Ryan." I blink, surprised, before a grin slowly moves across my lips. "Is that an order?" I ask her. She nods, blushing like mad. "Please," she says. I slide my fingers out, excitement coursing through me. "I'll be right back." I mean, that was like the most powerful
No,
part.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's, if anything, that is the most powerful moment Emily has, because one of the things, the only thing she usually talks about in all of her chapters is like this back and forth of like, oh, I'm so into these guys, but I shouldn't do this. And then she'll like make out with 2 of them and blow one. And then the next chapter, she'll say something again like, oh, I don't know why I did that. I'm such a slut. Like, oh, so that the fact that it's her taking agency and saying like, you know what, this is great, but we can make this better. Bring him out. Like, it really is, but you never get another moment like that.
No, you don't. And like it's like talked about, you know what I mean? And so, but like this was like finally the moment where it's like we're seeing this, we're seeing what this relationship is, and it's like she's finally taking control. And I mean, I think we just like need more, and I wanted more of that in the sex scenes of like her being like, Aiden, you go here, like Carter,
I wanted
you
more
do
of
that.
her. Like I wanted to hear more from her in general. So I feel like we have to do at least a little bit from the paintbrush scene.
I do have it out. Do you want to read it or
well, here you start, and you know, maybe I'll pick it up somewhere else.
Pick up the paintbrush. Okay. So I'm going to start from when he was like okay.
This is her and James, right? James the broody artist.
James the broody artist. Okay, so here's what happens. Like she's in Henry's like man cave and like watching a movie, I think, and they like he paints her, right? And like
one of the French girls,
like one of the French girls.
Yeah, it's full on Titanic.
Full on get a Titanic. Okay, all right. I hope I'm in the right place. Okay, and then you can like pick up.
Okay,
all right. "I've missed you," I said softly, pulling back. I move down her body, kissing her, lingering on her nipples as I take her panties off. She lets me. She lets me get her completely naked. I spread her legs wide, her pussy dripping wet. I move down between her legs, and she looks down at me, panting excited. "I've missed you too," she admits, though it pains her a little bit. "Good," I say. I take the brush handle first, and I tease her pussy with it. Her eyes go wide. "James," I smirk. "It's my lucky brush, like I said."
Yikes.
I slowly press it inside of her. Do you want to take it away?
This is literally where I marked it starting here.
Perfect.
She groans. "I'm happy I brought one of my biggest brushes with me."
What does that mean?
And I'm sorry, I've painted. I took scenic painting in college. I'm just like, no handle of a brush is remotely close to any sort of like sex toy that you would put inside of you.
No, you would feel nothing. You would feel nothing.
It would just feel like a stick, like poking you.
Putting a pencil up your vagina.
I press the handle in deeper. It's smooth, hard surface, fucking her. I lean forward and lick her clit as I slide the brush in and out. This is what I've been needing. I need to hear her moans, feel her body, taste her skin. Oop, that's 3 things again. Good job, BB Hamel.
She gets 4 threes, baby.
Yep, I press the brush in deeper and deeper, making her writhe with pleasure. Yeah, that's enough. I just wanted to emphasize the point that he is putting a paintbrush handle inside of her, and I don't know how... I mean, because I feel like everyone at some point has probably masturbated with like something, or even had sex with somebody and had something put in them that's not necessarily something you would like designed to put in you.
Yeah, you have your thing that you want. It's totally fine.
So I mean, but that's not one where I would think, because I feel like you would just be like poking yourself. Like there's not really enough stimulation, but I mean, I guess if he's like going down on her ceiling, I don't know. I
mean, here's my thing. Like, I feel like if you're gonna have a paintbrush fucking scene, or use it brush side up and like stroke her pussy with it. Yeah, and like, or do something like that.
Use
like, that
your
would be
tools.
sensual. Use your tools the way they're supposed to be used.
Well, and also, this is his lucky paintbrush that he carries around with him everywhere. Like, where has that paintbrush been?
I know, and it's like, have you washed it? It's wooden. Like, it absorbs like clear, like, this is UTI territory.
This could get moldy and, like, yeasty very quickly.
I know, yeah.
Yeasty boys up in here. So that's enough of that.
Boys. Yeah. Oh my God.
Okay, cool. Well, so at this point then, I mean, I guess we'll just get down to the basics here, and I'll ask you to give this book, My Brother's 5 Friends by B.B. Hamel, a few final grades and thoughts.
God, I could talk about this for so long. Okay,
yes. I know. So do you think, let's start with story. Okay. So for story, you're going to give it a score out of 10, 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be.
Okay.
So let's start with story. What do you think?
Can I just like preface this with, okay, I host a podcast called Too Stupid to Live. I read books that are, $5 and under. I have read very poor quality books.
Right.
And so I am a nice grader.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that everyone else probably gave this -17, but I say, let me just say that with my story, with my ratings. So for story, I gave it a 3.
Okay, that's so funny because I gave it a 4.
No,
so I was like,
good. Yeah,
I was thinking, oh, you know what? It's definitely not. Well, and to be fair, it's not the worst thing I've ever read.
No.
It's a very easy, quick read. I feel like once you start reading it, you'll probably finish reading it. It's not something that at any point I was like, oh my gosh, I need to set this down and just stop. Like, because I was like, well, I want to know what happens. Like, I want to see how this all works out. So, yeah, I gave it a 4.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have to say, it was like a really interesting premise. There were so many interesting details. It would, easily, if those details, like, were followed through and were fleshed out, like, I hands down would have given it
just
a 10.
not a lot of payoff for me. Yeah,
exactly. And that was, like, so disappointing.
How about syntax? How about the quality of Miss Hamel's writing? I must specify, too, when we say B.B. Hamel, it's B. Hamel.
Yeah, it's not like B.B. Newirth. It's
yes.
B.
Exactly. Or like BB's, that breakfast place in Burbank. So, which I love. Anytime anybody's in LA, you got to hit up BB's.
Oh, I should go there.
Super good. Super good.
Okay.
Syntax.
Here's the thing about syntax is that sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And because there were just like a few things where...
Rule of threes. A lot of adjectives.
But then there was like one part... Oh, okay. Like, I'm just going to read this real quick. But I think it was like James or something. This was the final chapter. Everything turns to shit. And this was like, I just worry about how all this is going to end. And I have no clue what he's thinking or where it'll all end. Like, that's what the sentence was. And I was like, baby, Jesus, like, proofread.
There were definitely a lot of sentences where it would seem like a continuing thought from, like, the previous sentence, but it was, like, a new sentence, like, and it's good, and it's sexy. And I'm like, you can get away with one of those, like, as, like, emphasis. You can't do 5 in a row, because then you're just negating the emphasis. So
I did give syntax a 3, but there were other, like, good parts of it too. Yeah. Like there were like something like, someone would think like there's more ways to love than there are to hate. And it's like that's true. And like that's a pretty beautiful thing, but then it'll be like followed up with like something like I don't know how it'll end. And I don't know how it'll end. Yeah.
Yeah. I give it a 4 too. Okay. Like same as story. I mean yeah, it's it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Sexcapades, which, is so funny because with a story like this, I would expect going into it that, you might not have the best story, you might not have the syntax, but the sexcapades will be off the charts.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Not for you. See, it was for me.
Yeah.
I thought, like, like, for what this is, like, I gave the sexcapades a 10. Or I actually wrote down 13 because I was like, this is great. Because, like, again, like, this was my first time reading like a full-on reverse harem. Okay. And it was like, and it delivered for me. Like this book, I'm sure I'll read more and they'll deliver more. But like,
I've read more before this.
Right.
It's not my specific fantasy, although I usually get more into like if it's like 3 of them, like like that's fine. I mean at 5 it just becomes overwhelming for me sometimes.
I mean,
like,
I'm sure in real life it'd be overwhelming for anyone. It's
even just reading it, I'm just like, where's your hand? Where's your hand? Where's your dick? Like I
know. Because, like, it could feel like, that game, what's the game where it's, like, red hand on...
Twister.
Like, sometimes it's, like, because I don't want to read a game of Twister. Like, it just, like, just, like...
Which is just bastardizing childhood memories.
I No, like left hand on tit. And
so you gave it a 13. Good for you.
I know.
I gave it a 6.
Okay.
I gave it a 6. Like, it's not the sexiest thing I've ever read.
Okay, yeah.
I thought the sex that they had was good. It wasn't great to me. Like, I just felt like throughout the book, there's not that much emotion or like connection beyond the physical. So even when I got to the physical, I'm like, well, I can't give it a 10 because like I want there to be some sort of emotional connection between them two in the bedroom. And so that being said, there were certain scenes where I would give a 10.
Oh, hands down.
Yeah.
I feel like for what this is, the sex is good. But I agree with you. Like, I do think, like, I feel like there's so many authors who are just like, oh, am I writing the same sex scene again and again? And it's like, no, you're writing two characters. You're writing two different characters.
Right.
And it's like, and I agree with you. Like, I feel like if there, like, I would have given the Sexcapades a 20 if, like, we had a fleshed out character.
Heat. Like between them, like, it's very physical, start to finish when it comes to the sex. So, I mean, but it took a while to get there too. That was like my other, downgrade. I was like, we gotta get there sooner, friends. Like, that's what this book is meant to be. Like,
it's an art. I think it's like an art form.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a balancing act. It's crazy.
Do you know how many books I counted? Do you know how many books that she's
written?
Yeah, 18 different series. But do you know how many books that she's written?
18 series.
Yeah, I counted.
Books, I'll say 50.
66.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the fact that 66 books, like, and clearly people are reading them.
Yeah,
I mean, clearly people are reading them. You're writing more.
I mean, this is also $4, so obviously she's making bank, and like people are gravitating towards it, and it's like, you know what? Like, what you're doing is working.
And it's shorter. You could pump like 5 of these out
in a day. Yeah.
In a day. I meant writing, not reading.
Oh yeah. No, I meant writing too. Actually.
In a day.
Hands down. Yeah. I don't know how long it takes to write.
Something to aspire to.
This is just something. This is coming from a person who spent all day instead of writing talking about paintbrush fucking. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that sometimes that does take all day. So that's fine. Are you, regardless of the grades we gave it, are you happy that this was, the first reverse harem story you read, or just that you read this book in general? Like, what are your thoughts thinking about what we just read now?
I mean, I'm 100% happy I read it. I thought it was like really enjoyable. These sex scenes are memorable. It's going to stick with me. And
I guess that's a great point to make too, is like, if you do remember certain scenes or certain characters after reading the book, like, it clearly wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah, and it's just like something like that's like goes to show like the author, and like the strength of the author is like, I've read like a lot of like empirically bad books, but I'll remember the sex scenes, and I'm like, you know what, like that's effective.
Yeah,
and I, like,
absolutely.
put on the author.
I'm not disappointed either. Like, I don't know if I would read the book again. I might read the paintbrush scene again. Like, just
of course, I screen grabbed it, so I have it forever.
Perfect. But it's but it also is not something that like would turn me off of the genre at all. Like, I do want to read more reverse harem stories. I'm not opposed to it. Would you want to continue to read either another reverse harem or another B.B. Hamel reverse harem?
Both. I mean, I'm going to read these again. There was a part of me that was thinking like, oh my God, like what if this... Wouldn't it be great if we had like this type of story, but in the hands of like a Beverly Jenkins or like an author, like or like a Nora Roberts who like wrote this, and like how like we would have these characters at the top of our intelligence. We're reading a book at the top for our intelligence, but it was this that would be delightful.
Would Beverly Jenkins be your first choice? Like if you had your choice of romance authors to write a reverse harem story, who would it be?
I mean, I would say Beverly Jenkins because I will say, like, I really love, I know everyone loves this book, but, like, Indigo. It was, like, one of the first stories that I read where, like, it was really about her pleasure, because like they were not having sex, they were having like sexual clitoral fun, you know, before marriage, but it really just like, it was like one of these like eye-opening things of like, oh, this is what you know, romance is. And so I was that's what I was thinking, primarily because we have these 5 men for her pleasure.
Yeah. I think Alyssa Cole would be a good one too.
Yeah.
I would love to read hers. You know what I would love to see too is, I would love to see a reverse harem, and maybe this goes against the whole concept of reverse harem, I'm not sure, but I would love to see one where it's a mix of men and women. Like, I wouldn't necessarily think that it has to be a group of men tending to a woman. Like, I'd kind of like to see a group of partners, like, tending to somebody. Like, ideally at the center for me would be a woman, just because I can place myself in that fantasy role. But, yeah, I don't know. I think because I feel like a lot of women fantasize about being with other women, even heterosexual women. So it would be something that I'd like to see, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe we need to write it with, you know, these 5 books that we can pump out in a day, apparently.
Oh, my God.
When we're not talking about
sorry to the
paintbrush fucking.
No, so sorry to the authors out there. Of course, you don't have to pump out 5 minutes.
Oh, my gosh, I know.
But, what was I going to say? Oh, gosh, I completely... you know, it's funny, I've read a lot of, like, gay romance recently for the podcast, and there was a part of me that wanted to see some of these guys get together, and, because I think, you know, like, I think it's hot, and, like, I know, obviously, like, the thesis, the reason this book is here is to please the woman, but, like, my God, I, like, really wanted to see
I don't see that enough in stories.
Yeah.
I've only read it in a couple, honestly, where it's been a threesome where honestly all 3 of them are together, like, so it's a polyamorous, you know,
so hot.
It is. It's so hot, and I love seeing guys together. I love seeing guys and girls together. I love seeing girls together. So I'm like, throw them all in the pot. Like, I am here for it.
Like a nice jambalaya.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that is.
Plenty of sausage, but also,
you know, some chicken and shrimp.
Clams. I was trying to, like, bring in the vagina somehow.
Yeah, if we had clams. Yeah, that's good. Clams and sausage. That's what this book should be called.
Clams and sausage?
That's if I had a tagline for the book, it'd be like clam and sausage.
Yeah, like five sausages and a clam.
Yeah. That's what, if they were, you know how like people put out like family newsletters like every year? If they were to do a family newsletter, it would be like, hi guys, here's an update on 5 sausages and a clam.
Oh
and
my
gosh.
Like,
oh, these guys.
Doesn't it sound like a weird, like mommy blog or something? Like,
hands down.
5 sausages and a clam.
It's a mommy blog.
Like she's the clam and she's got like 5 boys.
Sausages.
Yeah. So. Anyway, again, this is awful. Like, the things we think about, I just can't believe our mind goes there sometimes.
It's so great, though, but it's like everyone.
Yeah. I know we're not alone.
Oh, my God, every romance reader and author are times a million, so.
Well, I think we'll cap it there, and I'll say thank you for joining me to read this book.
Oh my God, Kelly, this was so fun, and I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, of course, and everybody out there listening, be sure to listen to, I guess what we'll call crossover part 1 of me joining Becky on Too Stupid to Live. And at this point, when this episode comes out, I'm sure that one will have already dropped. So you've got plenty of Becky and I in tandem to listen to. And there is sure to be some good bonus boobies that comes out of this episode. So if you are not subscribed to us on Patreon, I strongly suggest you do so.
Do it.
So with that, thank you everybody and have a good one.